So we've all been doing this a long time, and I know I bought my first property when I was 21, and I'm 55. So
you're old.
So that's right, I am old. So look, over any observations about what we've learned over decades of doing this?
Yeah, look, I really genuinely believe that to create wealth for retirement, you need leverage. And there's no better asset class to use leverage than property. And the stability of property over the last 100 years has really improved itself. So I'm a big believer in property, and I'm a big believer in leverage, and there's no better asset class to use leverage than property. I guess another thing that I've found over the years is, what drives property prices, and of course, interest rates can drive property prices, but people could say, well, higher interest rates reduce property prices. Well, that's not true, because in markets like we're in at the moment, where interest rates are high, we're seeing property prices
continue to grow and be on a tear in certain places.
And they're also affecting rents, because rents are being passed on to go up higher because the landlords are paying higher interest.
Yeah,
that's right.
So sentiment, to me, is the biggest driver.
I totally
of property
agree.
Price growth.
Yeah,
sentiment. Like if a market thinks it's a good time and everyone jumps into it, property prices will move.
Yeah, and the same with the opposite. Instead of growth, reduction in price.
Reduction.
It's all about sentiment.
That's right. When the media gets onto a suburb and they it starts promoting that the suburb's now not a great place to be buying, or the state or whatever it might be, that sentiment is can be a killer.
Yeah.
So another observation I see is that each of the capital cities are decoupled from one another. They all work independently, all at different times. When Sydney is up, typically you'll see Brisbane down, and having a diversified portfolio of properties, one in each of the major capital cities, and you don't need to go and buy 10. Some people go out and say, hey, you need to buy a portfolio of 10 or 15 or 20 properties. I don't believe that. I think 4 good quality assets in good locations will outperform 10 or 15 cheaper properties in poorer locations, and understanding that each capital city is decoupled from another. So if you have a diversified portfolio and you buy in each of the major capital cities, well, one capital city is going to be up when you want to sell. You sell that asset, and you keep the one that's not performing. So that's probably an observation that I've seen. Another observation is, and you probably have heard this over time, is that property doubles every 7 years. Well, property doesn't necessarily double every 7 years.
It can.
It can.
Yep.
Absolutely, it can. The typical timeline is around about 10 to 11 years. But what we find is in each capital city, there will be a period of 5 to 7 years, and that capital city will achieve about up to 80% of its growth in that 7-year period. So each capital city achieves maximum or majority of its capital growth over the 7 years, and then what will happen is the market will cool down, go sideways, may average sort of 4.4% per annum over the next sort of period. So property doesn't necessarily double over 7 years, but each capital city will have majority of its growth over a 7-year period.
I think that's a really important thing for investors to understand, because that it will go through periods of low growth, medium growth, and high growth. And we see or have seen investors make the mistake of selling things at the wrong time because they just get tired of the fact that their property might only be growing at 2 or 3 or 4% because that market is only growing at that rate. But in a couple of years' time, you'll see that it's done. Those markets are now doing sort of 12 or 14% and do that for a period of years. But it's I think it's investors do need to understand that those rates of growth move around over a 20-year period.
Yeah. Another observation is I've seen that there are 4 quartiles of property price growth. So when a market is at the beginning of its cycle, so it's 7-year cycle, the first quartile of property price growth occurs first, and that's obviously the quartile and the prices differ varying by state and city, but the cheaper properties perform the best in the first quartile. So it might be the 350 to 750 price points, and the reason for that is you've got first homeowners getting into that market. You've got investors coming in chasing yields that those lower priced suburbs offer. So, and typically sometimes these are slightly further from the city. Well, obviously they are further from the city because they're lower price, but they're further from the city. So those types of suburbs go first. Then what we see is the second quartile of price range goes next, which could be 800 to 1.5 million. Then the third quartile goes 1.5 to 3, and then the premium houses go last. And then what we find, interestingly, is the market flips and apartment prices start outperforming house prices because house prices have got so expensive that people need somewhere to live, and apartment prices represent the best value. And that is typically an indicator that market is hitting its peak, and it's time to probably exit if you want to exit.
Yeah.